Hello guys and welcome to the first part of the texturing in Blender 2.8 video tutorial. I'm the creator of the game called Snappy Mouse Run, and in the previous videos we finished modeling the teapot using background reference images, and in this part we will map the UV layout in order to prepare the model for texture painting. In particular, we will talk about what you need to consider when placing seams. In case you don't know what UV layout is, it's just a way of mapping a 3D surface to a 2D picture. For example, a world map is just a result of UV mapping the Earth globe. So let's see how this is done. First, we need to add the UV editor to our workspace. Either split the 3D viewport by dragging the corner, or there are preset workspaces up here. Currently, we are in the workspace called Layout. If we switch to UV editing workspace, we see the UV editor is already prepared. Here we will map the UV coordinates. A 3D object can also have multiple UV maps. Let's see if our teapot already has some. With the teapot selected, go to Object Data under Properties, and under UV Maps we will see it already has a default UV map. We will delete it and create a new one. Currently we are in edit mode, and let's deselect everything. Now delete the UV map, create a new one, and I will name it UV base. If you see some funny things going on in the UV editor, it's because not everything was deselected in edit mode and Blender tried to map the selected vertices. Don't worry about it, it's fine. Okay, for this particular object we have two mesh islands. One is the body of the teapot and the other is the top cover. It makes sense to handle these two separately, but we will keep in mind that all mappings need to fit onto this canvas in the UV editor. Let's do the body first. Select one vertex on the top cover, press Ctrl L to select all connected vertices, and press H to hide the cover, so we don't get distracted while mapping the body. Before we do the mapping, or how Blender calls it, unwrapping, we need to tell Blender where it should cut the surface in order to unwrap the faces. So imagine this like cutting the surface open and unfolding it until it's completely flat. By cutting, I don't mean modifying the actual mesh, but only marking for UV mapping. In Blender, those cuts are called seams. From looking at the mesh, a first guess would be to cut it right through the middle and unfold the body. Then we would need to unfold the front and back. The front we could somehow squeeze to make it flat, but the back handle will be more complicated to deal with. We need to somehow cut the handle open in order to unfold all faces. Perhaps unwrap it separately. Maybe there is a better approach to unfold the body as one piece. Maybe if we cut from the top all through, but leave the bottom face out, we could unwrap the body, the front and the back handle at once. Deselect everything, top view, turn on wireframe and X-ray, and select only the middle vertices. Press Ctrl E and select Mark Seam. The edges turned red, so the seams are set. Now press Ctrl L to select all connected and go to UV and select Unwrap. In the UV editor is the unwrapped UV map of the selected faces. So every selected face in the viewport has its mapped face in the UV editor. We can clearly see the cut was performed at the seams, and it has splitted the surface into two parts that are only connected by the base face of the teapot. At this point we could say that the body is mapped and move to the top cover, but there are some additional rules of thumb to follow when placing seams. First rule of thumb: we want to place seams where we don't expect too much texture detail. This way the texture will look more seamless. Since we will extract the texture from the background images, make them visible and go to the side view. In our case, most of the texture detail on the body will be located here on the sides and a bit here on the back. So we don't want to place seams right through here, where most of the detail is. Since we decided to cut from the top, we are safe on the sides, but not here on the back. Hide the teapot in the outliner, and if we look from the top, we see the back handle has got this line on it, and the front has also got some color. If we cut right through it, we will cut through this exposed detail. Maybe instead of cutting through the middle, we could cut a bit to the side and around it like this. What brings me to the second rule of thumb. If the mesh is symmetric, make the seams symmetric as well. This way the unwrapped UV coordinates will be much easier to correct and edit afterwards, and you will save yourself a lot of time and nerves. In our case, since the mesh is symmetric around the x-axis, this means if we place the seam a bit to the side, we will need to place another one on the other side as well. It is a potential solution. In our case, this will create some isolated UV islands. Currently, we have the whole body mapping as one main UV island. Isolated UV islands are mapping parts that were cut off from the main island using seams. A lot of seams usually means a lot of isolated islands. Sometimes you want to divide your mesh surface into multiple islands in order to texture them separately. This gives you more flexibility implement texturing because you can rearrange them more easily. On the other hand, the cost of many isolated islands is less seamless texture or more effort in order to make it look seamless. And that's the third rule. The more islands or seams you have, the more you need to correct the texture at the seams. It's always a trade-off. Usually if you follow the first rule and place seams where you don't expect a lot of texture detail, you will have little to correct afterwards, even with a lot of isolated islands. With that said, make the teapot visible. In our case we are lucky. We actually don't need the two exposed seams on the front and the back part, but only this one seam in the inner part of the handle. With this we'll make a compromise because there is still some texture detail that we are cutting right through on the upper handle connection. But since we have a symmetric seam, only one island, and this detail is partially hidden under the handle, it's a reasonable trade-off. Let's clear all seams by selecting all and pressing Ctrl E clear seam. I'll select only the inner loop and again Ctrl E mark seam. Select everything and select UV unwrap. So this is the unwrapped UV map of the teapot's body. And that's it for this video. In the next video we will take a closer look into the UV editor and explain how the texture gets mapped to our object. Thank you very much for watching, give a like and subscribe if you found this video useful, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!